quick disclaimer, I really think that this tutorial is more of like you following me along the journey as I try to recreate this dress than a tutorial, because honestly I learned a lot along the way making this dress, and there were some mistakes here and there are some things that I would definitely do differently if I was going to recreate this dress once again. So it's not perfect, and you know, there are mistakes here and there, but maybe you can learn from my mistakes. Maybe you can learn from watching me do what I tried to do. Hi and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Fumi, and if this is the first time you're seeing me, welcome. On this channel I do sewing tutorials, DIYs, thrift flips and all of that. So if you're really interested in sewing, learning to sew, and just like, you know, any of the words, if any of those words interest you, then you definitely want to stick around by subscribing and making sure you don't miss any future videos. So today's video, I'm really anxious about this one because I thrifted these, actually it's just one, it's not a whole set. I thrifted this fitted sheet for $6.99, and I thought I could try to recreate this beautiful House of CB dress. I'm a big fan. I love their dresses, and I just keep seeing them all over my TikTok and Instagram, and then of course I follow them as well. So yeah, they do have this dress on their website for I think 200 and something. I don't remember the exact price, but it's definitely way above my price range. So I thought I would just try to recreate my version of the dress, right, while still giving credit of course to the original designers, because I think they did a they always do a really amazing job. Anyway, if you're watching this video, it means I somehow managed to do a somewhat decent job, because yeah, then I mean, if you're watching it, then I uploaded it, and if I uploaded it, then I guess I did the dress. So this is what we have right now. I picked this because I really like the color. It's like a teal color, like it's just really nice. So I have all of my materials ready, and we're just going to get straight into the video then. See you. First thing that we're going to do is to take out the elastic band on the sheets. Like we usually, like for fitted sheets, they always have these elastic bands on the four corners. So I'm going to take that out, and then if the elastic looks good enough, I think I could actually keep it for like future projects, you know, saving the environment. So I'm going to do that, and then so that I can have like a flat piece of fabric to start cutting with. Also, I think, yeah, I'm also going to seam rip all of these like corner seams. Okay, so after taking out the elastic from all of the corners and then seam ripping those edges, we end up with these weird L shapes on every corner, like all the four corners of the fabric, but that's fine anyway. So I folded over this part, and I'm going to first of all start cutting. So the first piece that I want to cut is the back of the bodice of the dress, but as I folded it over and I noticed this part, I mean, I did press it with my iron, but it seems like this part where the elastic was encased is just going to have like these wrinkles for quite a while. So I don't want this to ruin the bodice of my dress. So what I'm thinking is I would just cut this part off like all the way down, and then I would eventually, like, this is what I would use for the straps, because for my own dress, the original dress doesn't have it, but for my own dress, I want the dress itself, not just the corset, but the dress to have straps. So I think this is what I'm going to use for my straps. So this looks like it's about like maybe a little under 2 inches wide, which I think should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead right now and cut that off so that we can start cutting the bodice of the dress. So I ended up cutting like all of the rough edges of my bed sheets, because I think this would be perfect to also use for like the cute ruffles that go all the way along the neckline. So I think I'm going to use this both for the straps and the ruffles. Like this, just I think it's going to look really good. So I've cut them all and I'm going to put them aside. So we're going to get straight into the bodice. Now this is like completely, like there's no shoulder in all of this, so you take your bodice measurements without like the shoulder area. And so the length for mine, I'm just going to mark that. So you just mark the length of your bodice. Okay, so after marking our length, next up we're going to mark our zipper allowance, because this dress has a zip down the back. So I'm using 1.5 inches for my zipper allowance. And then this is the waistline. This is where the bodice connects to the skirt or the dress. So usually at this point I would come in at this zipper allowance by 1/2 inch, just because like nobody's back is like completely straight as a ruler, so you just want to create a bit of a curve. So after coming in by 1/2 inch, I'm just going to like ease it back out into the 1.5. I have something like this. I'm going to pin the sewing allowance also, just so that it's not moving around too much. And then from this point to this point, I'm going to mark my bust measurement divided by 4 plus sewing allowance. Typically I use 1 inch for sewing allowance, so that's what I'm going to do. But if you want to use 1.5 inches or 2, feel free to do that. Okay, so I'm just going to mark that, and then at this point right here, I'm going to mark my waist measurement divided by 4 plus my sewing allowance, of course. And then I'm also going to add 1 inch for my darts, because I would like to put some darts at the back, so I'm going to add in 1 inch for that. That is basically it for the back. So when cutting it out, you would also be sure to cut this part away, and that's basically it. Here's what our back piece looks like. I'm thinking of dropping the neckline at the center back a bit by like, I don't know, maybe 1 inch, just so that I can have a bit of like a curve, but I'm not too sure about that. In the meantime, I think I'm going to leave it as it is for now, but I might change that, so we'll see. Okay, so I've gone ahead and clipped these 2 pieces of paper together, because we're going to be creating a pattern that we would then use to cut the front of the dress, the front of the bodice, because we're trying to conserve as much fabric as possible, and so it's a lot better to do a pattern and then use the pattern to cut on the actual fabric, right? So this is going to act as our center front. So this is the waistline, and this is the neckline, if you could call it that. And so since this is the center front, we'll be marking from here on out like that for horizontal measurements, right? And then just a reminder, if you remember when I was cutting the back, I talked about how this dress basically has no shoulder area, because like it's sort of off shoulder. It's not off shoulder, it just doesn't have like that area at all. So keeping that in mind, every vertical measurement that we take, we place our tape starting at 6 inches or 7 if you're going for a lower neckline, right? But I'm using 6. So this is how much of the top area that I'm excluding from all of this right here. So starting at 6. So if, for example, your shoulder to waistline measurement is 14 inches, let's say 14 inches, when you place your measuring tape up here, and then 14 inches is here, so this is where your waistline would be, right? So first thing I'm going to do is to mark my under bust. So that's basically your shoulder points to right under your bust, and so I'm just going to mark that and draw a straight line. Okay, great. So this falls on an actual line that we have here, so this is going to be so easy. It's a bit rough, but you get the point. And that is really all we need, because this is the actual full length that I'm using. Okay, and then looking at the dress, you can see that the curve at the under bust it comes at the center front, it does come up a bit, so it's kind of like this, it just swoops down from the center front like that. So from the under bust line, I'm going to come up by, I think, 1.25 inches. So I'm just going to mark that, and so this is kind of what we're going for. All right, so now we're going to mark bust measurement divided by 4 plus 1 inch for sewing allowance. You can use more than 1 inch for your sewing allowance, to be honest, so it just depends, but you have to be careful. I mean, if you put in 1 inch for sewing allowance, then when you're sewing you have to take in that inch. If you put in 2 inches, then you have to take in the 2 inches when you're sewing, so you just be careful about that. Okay, so I'm just marking my bust measurement right now with the sewing allowance as well. At the waistline, we're going to mark waist measurement divided by 4 plus sewing allowance, and then plus another inch, because I'm going to put a dart somewhere around here, so we're going to of course have to put in some allowance for the darts. This is basically what we have. It does look kind of weird right now, but I think it would look better. Like, okay, so first of all, I'm going to cut it out. So I'm going to cut it out here, and then I'm also going to cut out this part because this is a separate piece from this. All right, so here's what we have. This is the part that is around the bust area, and this is around the waist area. So also, if you look at the dress, you'd notice that it does, like, the bust area does kind of have like a bit of a sweetheart neckline. So I'm going to come down here by let's do 1 inch and see how that looks first of all. So here's what we have. Now what I think is, because this piece on the original dress is, you can see that it's kind of ruffled, I'm going to cut this into strips, and then I'm going to do the slash and spread method, which is basically when you take your pattern and you slash it into pieces and then you spread it out to create some volume. So I'm going to do that, and yeah, I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. A second actually. Okay, so I made another quick adjustment. Oh, and don't mind the arrows, I just put them so I would know which way is up by the time like I'm cutting this on my fabric. But I did make a quick adjustment. So right here, where the parts that is supposed to be kind of, because this is the center front and so this is the side, so this is going to be kind of under my arm, and so that's why I decided to cut into it a bit just to make it slightly lower, because I don't know, I just feel like that area should be a bit lower than the rest of it, although now I'm looking at it and I'm worried that I shouldn't have done that. But yeah, so basically the slash and spread is, I've created these lines and I'm going to use my scissors to cut through each of them. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have 7 pieces up here. So I'm going to cut through all of them. And then I have another piece of paper here. Then I'm going to spread them across. I think I'm going to maybe leave 1 inch or maybe 3/4 of an inch in between each, like, of space in between each piece, and then that way it's a bit more spread across. So when I cut it on the actual fabric, I would need to like gather it up to like get it to shrink back to this size. That's basically the idea of the slash and spread method. So I'm going to cut it and spread it across this piece of paper right now, and yeah. Okay, so this is what it looks like. I taped it to my paper. I did mix up these two numbers, so just ignore that. But yeah, just like a little bit of space in between. And then now I'm going to cut out this. So I'm just going to cut and I'm going to follow the pattern and just like cut around it, and then we end up having a much wider piece than we started with, and that's what we're going to use to cut on our main fabric. So that's how you do this slash and spread. That's how you do this slash and spread. Okay. All right, so at the end, this is what we have. So this is the waist area, and this is the piece that goes around the bust area. So this is going to sit here. So I think now we can cut this on our main fabric. This is what we have, and I cut 2 of each of them. So I cut 2 pieces of this, and I cut 2 pieces of this, because one piece is going to act as the main fabric and the other one is going to act as my lining fabric. So I also left 1/2 inch of allowance up here. This is the part that goes around my bodice basically, and then this is the part that goes around the bust. So I left 1/2 inch up here and down here, but for this piece I only left 1/2 inch up here. And so now that we have these 2 sorted out, I think next up we're going to cut the skirt part of the dress. So for the skirt, first of all, I folded my fabric over. That is a folded edge right there, and this is the end of the top layer. So you want to make sure that however you're folding your fabric, you have enough in length this way that you can measure the length that you want your skirt part to be with some extra. I think maybe at least 10 inches of extra, like 10 inches extra or something, because while we're marking the length, we're also going to need like some extra for the waist area, which is going to be here. So this style of skirt, it's actually a circle skirt. It's not a full circle, it's a half circle. So it's the 180 degrees, which is why we folded our fabric in half. So starting here at the closed edge, now this is where the waist, where we're going to measure the waist, and it's going to be in the shape of like a quarter circle. Now this part, it's a bit, there are different methods to do this, but you want to make sure that the quarter circle that you get to mark here as your waist is half of your waist measurement plus about 1 inch for sewing allowance. What you want to do is have your waist measurement divided by 2 plus 1 inch, and then you take that and then you sort of, this is like the quickest and easiest way I know to do this. So you take that, for me, for example, it's 14 inches. So I'm going to take that and just sort of eyeball it and try to see like what that would look like as a quarter circle here, and that should be somewhere around here. So I'm going to mark the distance from that point to my waist, which is about 9 inches. So I'm going to mark that 9 inches here, and then of course also mark it on this side, and then somewhere around the middle as well. Right, and so I'm going to connect these points together, and then I'm going to measure it once again for sure this time, just to make sure I have my 14 inches. And yeah, I do have 14.5 inches, which is fine. And so this is the waist, and that's how I do that. So next up, from this point, you're going to mark your length, the full length of your skirt, plus I usually add 2 inches for sewing allowance because it's going to be joined at this point, and then we're also going to hem the bottom. So from this point, you're going to go around and mark and measure from where your skirt starts, and then you're going to measure the length of the skirt, and then you're going to just mark that all around. So that's also going to form a larger quarter circle, and that's basically how I cut a circle skirt. We're done cutting the skirt, and I also went ahead to cut the lining pieces for the back of the bodice of our dress. So basically this is the back and these are the front pieces. And also I went ahead to put my interfacing on the front bodice as well. So this is, if you remember, that part of the front bodice that goes basically from the underbust to the waist. So I didn't do the interfacing on this piece that goes over the bust, but then I also did interfacing on the back as well. So, and remember, just your main fabric, not your lining pieces. Now we can finally start sewing. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually mostly all these straps. So while I was putting my interfacing, I took these straps that are supposed to be over the dress itself, not the corset, right? Remember, we cut these straps about 2 inches wide, and what I did was to fold it inwards on both sides and then to fold it over once more so that we can have this neatly finished strap. So I'm going to sew it just with a regular straight stitch close to the edge all the way down from top to bottom. And the length of your straps is honestly determined by you, so you take that measurement and see how long you need your straps to be. Now remember this part that I said we're going to use for the ruffles. So I have 2 long pieces of this. So what I'm going to do is to join them together, right? So it's just 1 long piece, and then I'm going to hem one end of it, just a tiny little double rolled hem all the way around one end, so that we can just prep it and get it ready to be used as our ruffles. And after hemming one end, on the other end, the end which is going to be attached to the neck of our dress, we're going to sew a basting stitch so that we can tug it together to turn it into ruffles. So that is for these pieces. So I have my ruffled up fabric here, which is going to be all around the neckline of the dress. I've gathered it up a bit, and I think I might still gather it up just a little bit more because it's still kind of longer than I would need. And then these are the straps for the dress. The original dress doesn't have straps, but this is a personal preference, so feel free to skip this if you don't want straps on your dress. Now going straight for the bodice of the dress, this is the front of the bodice. So remember when we did this slash and spread method for our pattern on this part of the dress, right, on the bust area. So I'm going to take off the pattern. I'm going to also make a tiny cut here to indicate the center front, just so I know where the middle is, because the middle is supposed to align with this middle right here. So I'll make a tiny cut here and here, and then I'm also going to do a basting stitch down here and up there, which is basically just a straight stitch in your widest stitch length, so that you are able to gather it kind of the same way we've done gathers on this as well. So I'm going to do a basting stitch down here and a basting stitch up there. Okay, so here are our front bodice pieces. That's the lining, and this is the front facing side. So as you can see, I gathered up the bottom and the top of like the piece that is going over the bust, and what I'm basically going to do next is to attach these 2 pieces together. So I'm going to just use a straight stitch to sew them together here. So I'm going to do that for the main fabric and for the lining piece as well, and then yeah, I'll show you what that looks like. Here is what we have. So these are the pieces that are going to act as like the main fabric, and those are the lining pieces. So I've laid them out kind of like a mirror type of thing. So whatever we do to these pieces, we also do to those ones as the lining pieces. So I have my 2 back pieces here. This is where the zipper is going to be. So this is the side seam, and here we go. So I laid them the exact way we're going to sew them. So I'm basically going to lay this over here and then sew a straight stitch to join them together like that, and do the same thing here. So I'm going to turn these 3 pieces into one wide piece, and then do the exact same thing for the lining as well. Okay, this dress is actually starting to look like the real thing, and I am so excited. So this is the main fabric, that is our lining piece over there, and as you can see, it's really starting to take shape. So now the next thing that we're going to do is actually to join the front to the lining, and of course this is where our ruffled piece comes in, because we're going to attach it right while we sew both pieces together. So when we turn them right side out, we're going to have like the cute little ruffles at the top there. We also have our straps here, so I'm just going to explain how this is going to go down, right? So with the ruffles, first of all, you want to just line it up and like pin it in place, right? So this is going to be a bit of work because I don't know why it's just like dancing around and it's not exactly straight. So I'm just going to pin it in place and then pin it all the way from that point to that point over there. And of course we're going to leave our zipper allowance out of it, so we're going to stop just before the zipper allowance. And then after pinning it and holding it all down like that, we're going to bring our straps as well and make sure that we pin it at the right place. So pin one strap somewhere around there at the front and there, and then of course take the other end and place it somewhere at the back so that when it's turned right side out, you have your full strap. That is if you're going to be adding a strap to yours. So with our straps in place, with the ruffles in place, we're going to take the lining piece and just place it over the main piece like this. So when you place it, you want to make sure that they are both like, you have the front side of the fabric facing the front side of the lining like that, so it's sort of sandwiched together and you have the rough insides on the outside. And then you go with a straight stitch all the way from point A to point B. And also I'm just going to, this is not necessary, but I just like the inside of my dresses to be neat, so I'm also going to sew a straight line here to close off this rough edge, and then I'm going to turn it right side out and I'm going to show you. At that point it's going to be looking like a cute little top, and like we're halfway to the finish line for the dress itself. So let's get to that. Wow, oh my goodness. So here's what our dress looks like right now, like a cute little top, and I think it's turning out really good. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to actually put in the darts. So I'm going to put 2 front darts and then 2 back darts as well. The darts is basically to sort of like cinch in the waist a bit and yeah, just give it some shape also. Okay, so we are practically almost done with like the dress itself, excluding the corset. So I've put my darts, as you can see, here, 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 and here, and this is what it looks like. So this is the skirt part of my dress. Now I pressed it and I made this line at the center front just because I wanted to make sure that it aligns properly. So I have a still barely visible line here at my center front for the top. So what I'm going to do is to make sure those two align, and then I'm going to pin this together and I would sew them together. Okay, so here is our dress. All that is left to do for the dress itself is to sew the center back closed. Close it over this way. So we have, what we're looking at now is the center back, and this is where the zipper is going to sit, right? So just from somewhere down here, usually I would do like maybe 10 inches from the waistband, and from that point just close it all the way down and then leave room here to insert the zipper. For some reason I forgot to get the right color of zip, so I still need to go to the fabric store, but for the sake of this video I'm just going to use this black one that I have. I would remove it before I actually wear the dress out to use like the right color, but just for this I'm just going to use this black one for now as a temporary thing. So after putting in your zipper and closing the center back, all that will be left to do is just to hem it, and it's basically done. You have a complete dress, and you can wear the dress. I really love this style because you can wear the dress on its own, or you could wear it with the corset over it, but we don't have our corset done yet. That is coming up next. So yeah, I'm really excited, and I love that I ended up going with the straps. I don't know if it's so obvious, but the bust part of my dress is it looks a bit wider than the original dress, and that is intentional because I didn't want, like, the chest is really open on the original dress, and while that is the style, I didn't want my neckline to be as low as that, so I did make it a bit wider. You can see from the look, if you look back at the original dress, right? So I think I'm fine with my decision to make this part wider and then to add the straps as well, just because I'm uncomfortable with like strapless dresses. So let me finish up this dress and I will try it on and show you what it looks like. So much for watching this video. So I will see you I'll see you in my next video. Bye.